Hi everyone, Dean from Design Scan Print 3D here. In this very quick video, I'm just going to run through this month's models that have been released on the Patreon platform. I'm going to go through sort of each figure and give any advice or tips for printing them successfully, and just basically running through them quite quickly. As I'm doing this, if anybody has any questions or wants to know anything a little bit more, just drop a comment below this video and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. So let's take a look at this month's models. So we've got 4 figures and we've got 4 custom models. So again, the figures are from some recent scans, a couple of them from the Peterborough show and a couple of them from a scanning session earlier this year. A mixture of Victorian type figures as well as a couple of modern type figures there, and there's the driver sitting down controlling the loco as well. Alongside the figures, there's also 4 custom models. So we've got a new house front, which is actually a weaver's cottage from about a mile down my road, which I think is always just a nice sort of typical village in West Yorkshire to have them types of houses, especially with them really long elongated first floor windows. I think that, it's quite unique to these type of buildings. Then on the left we have the street furniture files. So we've got these very early zebra crossing light, and a small bollard as well, with obviously just the keep left in there. In the bottom right, we can see we've got the hand water pump, which is quite an intricate little model, but I think it could really, it could print out really well for a lot of people. And then in the back on the right hand side there, we've got the square guttering set up there. And again, I'm going to run through that in just a second, but that's basically a modular system, so people can print off whichever parts they need to fit to their buildings, basically. So let's run through the figures each individually. I mean, the figures are pretty straightforward. So included in the first one is driver 018. And again, it's a very typical sort of driver figure. Included in these files is a version with supports for if you're using an FDM printer, such as the Ender 3, which I love. So then you can then just use them files to print off. If you're using a resin printer, you probably want to create your own supports in your own slicer. But again, that's very typical of the models that I create. Again, so now this is female 034. Again, this should print really straightforward. So the only thing is this umbrella. I have made it a little bit oversized, so it prints correctly on my machines, but you might just have to be a bit careful with supports and things like that around the umbrella. Everything else should be really straightforward with this model. And then here we have male 073. Sort of a bit more of a character pose in this one, but I think it's quite nice to add that to some of these figures, and I'm going to hopefully try and do that a little bit more in the future as well. Again, this should print really straightforward. The fingers are going to be the trickiest bit to print, but again, it should be fine. I've printed these out with success most of the time. And again, this is more of a modern figure. This was scanned at Peterborough, and again, this was meant to go in his loco, but again, this could go anywhere in a scene. And again, this prints really straightforward and really easily. So let's have a look at the custom models. So like I said, we've got this guttering system, which is made up of various single components, which can all be broken down into parts and printed off. Now, inside the folder for this, you will actually find these parts are all labelled and exported into separate files. So like this hopper, for instance, is a completely separate file to the downpipe, which is a completely separate file to the brackets and guttering and so on. And these sort of swan, I don't know what you call them, the overhanging guttering sections with the angles on. Now what I've done as well is in these files, I've given various lengths of these, the downpipes, the guttering, and these projected items, like from 500 millimeters all up to about 2000. So I think that covers the majority of situations for most people. Same with this overhang here. I think we've gone from a pretty small overhang of maybe 250 millimeters up to about, I think it's about a meter overhang. So it should cover say most of the situations. If there is anything that somebody specifically needs, just drop me a comment and I can add it onto my list of stuff to do, and I'm more than happy just to quickly scale these things up and down if people need them. So the next item is this hand water pump. Again, in the files, like the guttering system, this is actually broken down into individual components. So I believe the bottom bit with the overhanging spout is one file, the handle is another file, and this top bit here is another file. Now, I did manage to print this on my Ender 3 FDM printer at 60mm scale, but the details on this are quite intricate. So I think this is probably one that's going to really favour the resin printers more than it is the FDM printers. But again, I think it should work. Or you maybe might just need to oversize it a little bit, just be able to print these thin sections of the model. The Weavers cottage windows and doors, again, print really easily. Now, when you see the file, it's broken down into upper window, lower window, and door. Again, so you can print whichever parts you need, and you always want to print these sort of tilted back 90 degrees, flat on the bed if you're using an FDM printer. The only thing that you might want to adjust on your slicer settings is you'll probably need some supports under the door handle, or you could just try to then create your own door handle afterwards or anything like that. I mean, I just use a very little support in there that's automatically generated by the slicer, and it prints really well. Again, the details are quite big and chunky on this, so there's no real issues with this one at all. And then we have Street Furniture A. Again, this is broken down into separate parts. So for this bollard, the lower section is printed separate from the top section, and then you can just glue them together afterwards. And this, the zebra crossing, I think the way I've broken it up is this top section here is detached from this section, which is then detached from the body of the zebra crossing. Again, just to make it easy to print, and you can print most of these things without supports. The only little addition I made to these as well, which isn't quite realistic, but I've put these dividing lines in here. They're very, very, very subtle, and you can't really see them when they're printed, but you can see them if you touch them and you run your fingernail down the side of it. I just put these here because I prefer to have these little gaps, so when I'm painting, I've got something to line up with. And you know, sometimes if you're really clever, you can get the brush to almost just nicely go around these edges without crossing over into any other areas. I always find that the way that I like to work, so I'm hoping you guys do as well. And so that's the run through really of the models for this month. Like I said, everything should be really straightforward to print. You shouldn't need supports for many items. I think there's supports needed for a couple of these items in here, such as these overhanging brackets maybe. Oh, sorry, not overhanging brackets, these overhanging guttering sections. And as well on this, you maybe need some custom supports to make sure that print's fine. But everything else should be relatively straightforward. If anybody has any questions or queries, again, just drop me a comment and I'll answer you the best I can. And if, not much more to say really on this month's releases. So if any of you aren't currently Patreon members and aren't able to access these files, you can head over to my Patreon website, which is patreon.com/DSP3D. In here, you can check out all the information around the different tiers. But quickly, the appreciation tier is if you just think what I'm doing is great and you just want to support what I do, but you also get a discount in the eJunkie store of 5%. The hobbyist tier, you actually get access to all the figures for this month, plus the back catalogue of every other custom model, as well as quite a few other perks as well, like free 3D scanning and stuff like that. And then the commercial tier is the hobbyist tier, but it gives you that license to sell the printed figures and files on your own stores. So if you want to know more about them, again, just check out the website or just drop me a message and I'm happy to answer any questions at all about that. So that wraps up this month's models. I hope everybody has fun printing them, and I'd love to see your results if possible. So until next time, guys, take care.